This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on AFR Talk. Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at onenewsnow.com. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email us anytime at focalpoint@afr.net. Focalpoint@afr.net.
Hi, and welcome back to this Thursday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. I hope you had an opportunity to hear my conversation with Tim Wildman, the president of AFA, in the last segment about the comments from Andy Stanley, who's the pastor of the second largest church in America, that appeared on the pages of USA Today yesterday. And I found his comments, as did Tim. I found them to be disturbing and confusing and, frankly, alarming. You know, and part of the concern is here is somebody who's a spiritual leader of the second largest church in the United States. So his word packs a lot of weight. There's a lot of influence, not just the people who are in his church, which represents a sizable group of people, but then the stature that he has in the Church of Jesus Christ nationwide, and how what he says is going to be heard. It's going to be repeated. There are people who are going to be influenced by it. They're going to be drawn in toward his view of this issue just because of who he is, because of who his father is. So it's a particular concern because of the kind of ripple effect that his comments are going to have. They appear in USA Today, which is one of the most widely read newspapers in the country. Now, Tim referred to a column I have that it's up at onenewsnow.com. And I encourage you to go there and get that. I tweeted out a link to it. I've also got it up on our Facebook page, the Focal Point Facebook page. So I encourage you. My Twitter handle is Brian J. Fisher, and you can find us on Facebook at Focal Point. Just put Focal Point in the search bar, and it'll pop up our Facebook page. I encourage you to go to that page. I encourage you to like it. Encourage your friends to like the page. But there's a link to my column, and I would encourage you to get that and read that column over the course of the day. Now, just to reiterate, the issue here is what the Kansas legislature was doing is they were trying to enact a law that would protect the religious liberty of Christian businessmen. That was the point. The same thing is happening in Mississippi. It's happening in Idaho. The Arizona Senate passed a religious liberty protection bill yesterday. So there are a number of states that are alarmed by what they see happening in Oregon. You've got this baker in Oregon. He had gay customers. He had no problem doing business with homosexuals. That was not the issue for him. It wasn't their orientation. It was the fact that they wanted him to participate in the celebration and endorsement of a counterfeit marriage. And that's the thing he said, I cannot do. Now, part of Stanley's problem, I think, Andy Stanley's problem, is he was ill-informed. You know, he was under the impression, apparently, that this gay baker and the florist in Washington and the photographer in New Mexico had simply refused to do business with homosexuals, and that is absolutely not true. In fact, these were repeat customers. They knew him. That's why they came to him for the cake, because they'd done business. They'd bought products from him before, and he had no problem selling them products. But he says, look, as a Christian, this is where I have to draw the line. I can't participate in something that is going to cause me or put me in a position where I am sending a message where I endorse, approve, promote behavior which the scriptures clearly condemn. And, of course, the Constitution, First Amendment, protects the free exercise of religion. He doesn't need any other legal defense other than the very first clause in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights, the first of the Bill of Rights. So that's what this is all about, trying to give some protection. The baker is in trouble now with the state of Oregon. They've made a finding that he is guilty of civil or criminal discrimination against this couple. He's the one that's being discriminated against. This is blatant religious bigotry. It's blatant anti-Christian bigotry. You talk about somebody being discriminated against, somebody being marginalized, it's the baker. He's the guy that's being discriminated against. I mean, these gay rights laws, they're like Jim Crow laws because they are segregating out Christians. They are separating Christians from polite society. And they're being told you can't have a job, Or you can't work here because you're a Christian because of your views on homosexuality. Or you can't go to school here. Or you can't be in this graduate program of counseling because of your views on homosexuality. So Jim Crow is back. Jim Crow is back, and Christians are the victims of these Jim Crow laws that are in the day. Remember, it was liberal Democrats that enacted Jim Crow laws back in the day. That was all the work of Democrats, all the work of liberal Democrats. Now, it was the conservative Republicans that were fighting for civil rights for blacks back in the day, back in the Reconstruction era. And then even during the Civil Rights era, it was white Democrats that were filibustering the Civil Rights Act. A greater majority of Republicans voted for the Civil Rights Act of 64 and 65, the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. They passed because of Republican support. A greater percentage of Republicans voted for those civil rights acts than Democrats did. So the media out there has completely distorted that and twisted it all around. But just like liberal Democrats enacted Jim Crow laws back in the day, now they're enacting Jim Crow laws again today, only this time the people that are being segregated out of polite society are not blacks, but Christians. So they're being discriminated against based on their religious beliefs. You know, you're familiar with the story of the photographer in New Mexico. Once again, Christian photographer, this lesbian couple comes, we want you to film our lesbian commitment ceremony. And she said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to do that because of my convictions as a Christian that marriage is a union of one man and one woman. Now realize that in New Mexico at the time, same-sex relationships had no legal status whatsoever. They didn't have civil unions, domestic partnerships, gay marriage. Their Supreme Court has since imposed by judicial fiat its moral view on the state of New Mexico. But at the time, same-sex relationships had no legal status whatsoever. And she politely declined. She wasn't angry about it. She wasn't obnoxious. She didn't say mean things. She said, look, I need to preserve my conscience here and my Christian convictions. I'm not going to be able to do it. They found somebody else to do it. No problem. And if they really believed in tolerance, which they claimed to, then that would have been the end of it. They would have been fine. Okay, we respect your views. We respect your convictions. We'll go somewhere else. That's what they would have done. But the reality is they don't believe in tolerance. Ladies and gentlemen, gay activists do not believe in tolerance. They are bullies and they are bigots, and they will not be content until they have marginalized and silenced every voice of opposition to the normalization of homosexuality. Well, anyway, this lesbian couple went to the New Mexico Civil Rights Commission, and they wound up getting a $6,700 fine levied against this woman for politely declining to violate her own conscience and violate her own Christian beliefs. Now, what Kansas is trying to do is trying to provide protection for these Christian businessmen, these Christian bakers, the Christian florists, the Christian photographers, so that they don't get hauled into court, so that they don't have to incur attorney's fees, so that they don't have to run the risk of going to jail or paying a huge fine for simply conducting their business according to Christian beliefs. Now, Andy Stanley apparently felt like these people were refusing to even to do business with homosexuals, which is absolutely not true. You know, that's why he should have just referred this on to a family organization, a pro-family organization that deals with these issues every day, some First Amendment legal firm that deals with religious liberty issues like Liberty Counsel or Liberty Institute or the ACLJ. Go to one of those groups that deals with the issues of religious liberty every day. Instead, they went to a guy who was poorly informed and apparently very confused about what the Bible teaches. But here's my point. You know, Andy Stanley says, look, the essence of Christianity is serving people we don't see eye to eye with. I agree with him about that. I agree. That's the essence of Christianity, serving people we don't see eye to eye with. That is the essence of Christianity. The Son of Man came not to be served, but what? To serve. He came and he served everybody. And clearly there were people who did not see eye to eye with him, including the Pharisees. But Jesus served them. If we believe what the Bible says about him, he served them just as much as he served the lepers, just as much as he served the woman with the flow of blood, just as much as he served the blind and the crippled and the lame. He served the Pharisees. So when you look at what Jesus did with the Pharisees, how did he serve them? He told them the truth, and he refused to retreat. He refused to capitulate. He refused to compromise, no matter how strong and how withering the criticism was that came against him. And the criticism that came against him was lethal. He wound up losing his life because he would not capitulate to the pressure he was getting from the politically empowered and politically correct crowd of his day. So sometimes that's what service means. Sometimes you got to stand your ground on, plant your feet on the truth, stand your ground there, and refuse to retreat or capitulate, no matter how strong the opposition is that comes against you. And, there is a difference, and I came across another column that illustrates this. There's a difference between serving someone and enabling somebody. Serving someone and endorsing their behavior. Now, here's the example. This is a piece on Stand Firm in Faith that I came across this morning. And here are two simple illustrations he used. Let's say you had a porn star that lived next door, was your next door neighbor. Now, you might serve them by baking cookies for them. You're baking cookies for the neighbors, and you take some cookies over as a gesture of hospitality, a gesture of kindness, a gesture of neighborliness. You take them a batch of cookies. That would be different than offering to drive them to the porn set and offering some kind of financial assistance to enable them to further their porn career. You have to say, no, I can't do that. I can serve you, I can love you, but I'm not going to endorse what you do, and I'm not going to enable you to do what you are doing. So there's a difference between serving and enabling, serving and endorsing, serving and agreeing. Now, maybe you got a neighbor that's a heroin addict. So you might serve this heroin addict by making an appointment for them with a rehab counselor and driving them to their appointment and being a counselor and a sponsor for them as they try to work themselves clear. But you would not take them to an appointment with their neighborhood heroin dealer. Says, oh yeah, I'd be happy to drive you there, and if you're a little short on cash, I'll give you a loan. You wouldn't do that because you love them too much. So there's a difference between serving people and enabling them, and that's a piece apparently that Andy Stanley does not get. Number to call if you want to join the conversation about this, and sort of what I'm interested in hearing about from you is just general comment about, this is alarming to me, this retreat on the part of a major Christian leader from the issue of homosexuality, this retreat in the culture war, taking him and apparently the second largest church in America completely out of the culture war. They're now sidelined. They are now useless in the culture war. They're going to have no influence, no salt, no light. And he's encouraging Christian businessmen to keep Christ out of their businesses. I don't know how else to put that. Leave Jesus out of it. You don't want to sell businesses to couples or cakes to couples? Fine, but leave Jesus out of it. I don't understand that, how a pastor can tell Christian businessmen, leave your faith at home when you go to the marketplace. I'd like to get your reaction, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Back in 2.